Welcome to Make and Decorate, a podcast for makers who love to sew, quilt, knit, and decorate. Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie, and I welcome you to the Make and Decorate podcast, where I sometimes chat with guests and other times chit-chat with you all about being a maker of quilts, bags, clothes, home dec, and a lot more. Before we get started, I would like to ask for any help you are able to and want to offer to grow and maintain this little podcast of mine. This podcast is produced in its entirety by myself and free to listeners like yourself. And there are a few ways you can help this podcast to continue at no cost to yourself. And I do, of course, also have some a Patreon group too that you can choose to subscribe to. So you can like and review the podcast on the platform you listen to it on and share it with others. Or you can go to my YouTube channel at Make and Decorate and subscribe to the channel. I'm getting closer to the 1,000 minimum subscribers in order to unlock monetization opportunities for my YouTube channel. And all of the podcast episodes are on my YouTube channel. Some of them are in both video and audio formats, so you want to go check that out. Again, it's at Make and Decorate, but the channel itself is called Stephanie Socha Design, I believe. And so just use the at Make and Decorate. It's the easiest way to find it. Also, I invite you to join my Patreon group at patreon.com/makeanddecorate. You can subscribe to either the free or a paid tier level in my Patreon group. Paying members receive a full bonus episode every month. And I've been posting bonus episodes since 2019. So there are many, many episodes in the bonus library to listen to when you subscribe. Finally, thank you for listening, because if it were not for listeners, there would be no Make and Decorate with Stephanie podcast. On this episode, I have a special guest, Atsushi Futatsuya with Sashiko Stories and Upcycle Stitches. I cannot express to you how honored I feel to have who I now consider my Sashiko sensei as a guest on my show. And I probably should not admit to this, but I was so nervous. And it is probably braggadocious of me, but I believe this episode is beyond amazing. Not because of me, but because of the stories Atsushi shares with us about the history and culture of Japanese Sashiko. So here we go, Sashiko Stories with Atsushi Futatsuya. My guest today is Atsushi Futatsuya, and Atsushi is a Sashiko artisan. He educates on Japanese Sashiko and has Sashiko Stories. So I'm very honored to have you here, Atsushi, with us and talking to us about this just like a wonderful gem of a hand art of stitching.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So, of course, the topic of today's episode is Sashiko. And before we start, could you please tell us what Sashiko is?
Yes, that's gonna be a very good question to ask first, because many people are wondering what Sashiko really is.
Mhm.
It's kind of difficult to define what it really is, because if I define it so easily, I may have to exclude some of the other people who are in this culture. So, in general, though, when I have to define what Sashiko is, I often say that Sashiko is a stitchery, often by hand, with a lot of Japanese culture and philosophy behind it.
Mm.
And that's about it. Just the hand
Yeah,
stitching with a lot of Japanese stories.
right. The other thing that kind of goes hand in hand with Sashiko is Boro,
Yes,
and
correct.
that's a totally different thing, and I had the wrong idea of what Boro really
Mhm.
was until I learned about it from you on your YouTube live videos, and I was just like, wow, about it. So if you could just quickly tell us about Boro as well.
Sure. Before that, is that okay to ask you what was your understanding about Boro was?
My understanding about Boro was that it was a Japanese type of hand stitching, but for mending.
Mm-mm-mm. So that was
That
more
was
like
it.
the technique or style or
Yes.
design.
Style, design, yes.
It is now really your understanding is very correct in the trend of Sashiko and Boro because that's what is written. That's how it is introduced. But
Mhm,
in reality, Boro itself carries a lot of negative image, and it is the word for the torn, damaged, or tattered, for that matter. But when I explain what Boro is, I do not use Sashiko as the comparison. Some people discuss if it's Sashiko or Boro, but there's no such a thing as Sashiko or Boro. It is Sashiko then Boro, which
mm,
means that the Sashiko is the hand stitching process of hand stitchery with the sorry. The Sashiko is a hand stitching developed in Japan, and the Boro is one ultimate result of keep doing Sashiko.
mhm,
So it's when we keep doing
mhm,
stitching and we call it sashiko, that piece will be a form of boro at some point.
mhm.
So we never say we do boro because that's kind of it's the result. It's the one status. So we don't really make it as a verb.
Right, and then you also said that Boro in Japanese culture is not the same as it is in the trendy Western culture because it was like, I think I remembered you said something about making a Boro placemat, and that was weird.
Yes, it's very weird. It's like a drinking soup from the toilet,
Mhm,
like a toilet, you know. Imagine
right.
that you you get a second-hand toilet from the
Right.
local thrift store. It's
Mhm,
very bright and shiny, and it says sanitized, but it's a toilet. We have a very psychological image that that's the toilet. We would not be comfortable drinking soup, even if somebody else served that.
right,
So
right.
we have that similar image to borrow. So when I have a piece of borrow on the placemat with the food, with the flour face, that's kind of okay for me. But if it's like a touching the food, I wouldn't touch that
Right,
food.
right, because the Boro is, kind of like a process of, um, the cloth being used and reused and reused and then becoming like a kitchen rag, and you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
Like, that's what I
Exactly.
understand.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, good. So that is our, definitions of Sashiko and Boro, and let's just get into your story. It's very fascinating, and when did you learn Sashiko and who taught you?
I don't remember when I learned Sashiko. Many
Ever
people
since
ask
you
me.
can remember?
Many people ask me how old were you when you started doing Sashiko? But I don't remember the time I could not do it. So when I started teaching Sashiko, I started doing so because somebody else asked me to teach.
Oh,
But for me, my first reaction is like, why can't you do that? Because it was so normal for me that I don't remember the time I couldn't do it.
mhm,
I often use the analogy of using the spoon to have a soup. We
mhm.
probably don't remember the first day of using spoon,
No.
but that's how ordinary to me. And same reason, I do have several artisans in my memory that they were nice to me, but I don't think they are exactly the teachers I had. It was more like a
Mhm,
group of artisans that my family was working with are the teachers I had.
mhm.
So I didn't really
Okay.
have the learning or teaching or curriculums of those learning. It's just happened to be there and I happened to have it.
Oh, okay. And you did grow up in a Sashiko family business, is that right?
It's correct.
Yes. And that was in Japan. And then so do you want to say anything about growing up in a family business that is Sashiko?
Yes. So Sashiko was um, stitchery out of the necessity. We will probably talk about it later on,
Mm-hmm.
but many Japanese people had to practice sashiko, and because of the economic growth, the Japanese people stopped doing sashiko. Many Japanese people stopped doing sashiko, and there was the moment that sashiko was discontinued for, let's say, 50 or 100 years.
Mm.
And my grandmother was the one who revived sashiko based on our region's sashiko, and then she
Oh,
made a business out of it. And I was born into that family as the third generation.
wow. Okay.
So it's not something I was, and I'm not really proud of it yet because Sashiko was more like ordinary things, and then my family kind of tried to monopolize it or even make a profit out of it.
Mm.
So I'm not really
Mm-hmm.
100% happy about or
Mm-hmm.
proud of my background, but it is true that my family, I was in the system of trying to preserve the Sashiko in many ways possible.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And then you came to the US and have been here ever since, right?
Yes.
And you started sharing Sashiko on YouTube. Was that like the first time, or how did you first start?
I, yes,
Um,
probably made YouTube videos for the workshop I was invited to.
mm,
The Indigo Dye group in New York first invited me to teach Sashiko,
mm,
and to help them, I made the video to kind of explain what Sashiko would be. That was in 2016, and I believe that the first workshop was in 2017, but I met them before that, so it's the same time around.
mm,
And back then, there was only one person who was showing the video of Sashiko, and I don't know if she's still doing that, but there were no other videos about Sashiko's stitchery or stories or even technique designs. So
mm.
that was the first time I wanted to kind of share what Sashiko would be.
Yeah.
And yes, ever since, for some reason, it's like I cannot. It's like a miracle that the trend is catching up. I never
Yes.
expected this would happen to my life.
Yeah, because I think right about that time, um, it did start becoming a trend because of there was this resurgence of the younger generation getting into crafting, sewing, and all of those types of arts. And it has just kind of continued. And now, to me, this is just my perception of it. It started as just learning the craft to do it as part of like arts and crafts, and then more recently I think it was adapted into the environmental, like, upcycle and use it for that.
It's
Mhm.
very true. So Sashiko now has a lot of tails.
Yeah.
So it is bigger than what it was, and it's becoming somebody else.
Yeah.
Which is okay, but like,
Yeah, many transformations, but I just am very happy that, like, discovered, or I didn't discover you, but I just, like, found out who you were, and again, like you said, you can't remember the first time in Sashiko, but I was trying to think of when was the first time that I heard you talk about it, and I think it was several years ago. You were asked to speak at Indie Bindies, like virtual, um, sewing summity type thing.
yeah. Um,
And then I did this deep dive of like, who is he?
I really appreciate that. This kind of opportunity is very much appreciated. Although I do not really accept it much because
Mhm.
I had several bad experience with those who wanted to me say what they wanted to write or edit.
Oh, yeah,
So that they
yeah.
had already something written up, some script that
Got
was there.
you.
So
Oh.
they were not planning to talk about what it
Mhm.
was. So, I asked you
Mm.
to take I probably said, like, since you learned Sashiko from me first, I'm very happy to share
Mhm.
anything I have. So
Mhm.
you are the one who, came to me first.
Mhm.
And
I
that's
did.
why I would be happy to share anything.
Yeah, I'm really honored and happy that you are willing to do this. And one of the reasons I did want to have you on because to just continue to share your stories and get this out on this platform to my listeners. And it was true though to be able to talk about this with you, to take your core in essence workshop really helped kind of get a deeper understanding
Mhm.
of the culture of Sashiko, in addition to technique. And so I really appreciate that. And let's talk about, well, first I want to talk about what Sashiko Story is and what you do. And then we'll go back and talk about the history.
Yes. So the account Sashiko Story was kind of like my platform, or there was opportunity to learn about cultural appropriation, which I did not know until 2019. And we had a little incident, and some other people pointed me out that you were experiencing cultural appropriation right now. So you got to react to it, or you got to learn about it. Then I realized that it happens because of the lack of stories. There's only the context, or there's no context yet, only technique or result. And of course, in my understanding, we cannot appropriate the culture, but it can be used when we don't have the context, when we don't have a story.
Mm, right.
And the story I have is not significant for me. It's my story, and it's not really something I am proud of, or it's not something
Mhm,
even entertaining. It's not fun at all. But because of the cultural difference, because of this trend, I realized that my story is actually somewhat interesting or entertaining or inspiring.
mhm,
So I decided to just keep sharing the Sashiko story. And that's probably the only one way to preserve the Sashiko we practice. Because technique itself
mhm,
is not that difficult. It's just hand stitching. So if I focus on just teaching Sashiko's technique, which you can probably get it from YouTube or other free platform, but that does not fulfill the context. So I decided to make the Sashiko story that goes to the Instagram, and
mhm,
also my workshops both in person and online,
mhm.
and also some stores that I can support the other artisans who produce supplies and tools for the Sashiko way practice.
Mhm. Yeah, so you have an online shop with, tools and notions for Sashiko, and, for a time, I don't think you do it anymore, but you did do hand-dyed Sashiko threads.
We still do. We
Oh, you do? Okay.
It's really low in stock, so it comes and goes. But what?
That's good, though.
Yep.
One of a kind, and, the, so, I see you do, I think your most used platforms that I see you on are
Yes,
Instagram
correct.
and YouTube. So Instagram, you have these beautiful visuals in your posts of Sashiko stitching of either garments or projects,
Mhm,
and then with that is a little bit more of a story of the culture
mhm,
of Sashiko and trying to really like just infuse that into anyone who wants to learn
mhm.
more about it and understand it better, um, which is great. And I do love your YouTube live videos. You do the English version on Thursday evenings, most Thursdays, not every, but a lot of Thursdays you do those.
I tried my best until recently, but yeah,
And then there's a Japanese version that you do on
it's
Friday or
Thursday
Wednesday?
morning.
Oh, Thursday morning.
Yeah, so Japanese first and then English at night.
Okay, got it, yeah. And, and then the format of this is that you've got the camera down while you are Sashiko stitching, something,
Yep.
and then you talk. And so I find that very just interesting because I, you say that it's not that hard, the Sashiko stitch, but I feel like learning the Japanese cultural way of doing the stitch is uh, something that takes practice and
Yes,
time
absolutely.
to learn. And when you do learn it, you do kind of get this unshin, which is the rhythm of the stitching. And I love seeing that for you. I mean, with you doing that. And you had mentioned one time, because your mother also does Sashiko stitching, and you said that she can sometimes be as fast as a machine
Well, many
because
people
she has
are.
done it for so long,
Many people are
and
at
she's
this moment.
hmm?
Many people, like including my students, are probably faster than the machine at this moment. Some people are
Wow.
getting very, very good.
Yeah, that's great.
It's
I know.
great.
I need to that's one of my goals, is to just keep practicing, but I want to do that, you know, um
They stitch
part of
insane
the
amount.
class.
They stitch
Yeah.
insane amount though.
Right.
Like
And the other thing I like that you also talk about is that it's not about, like, I don't know, statistics of size of stitches and
no,
this and that.
no, absolutely not.
It's really kind of like getting into the mindset of the culture and appreciating the fabric and the thread and the needle and what you're stitching. Um, which is also was very illuminating to me, learning that. Um, and so yes, YouTube Live, and there's another Domestica online course that's out there. So if anyone, and I've mentioned this on my podcast before, that if there's anyone that wants to just see what this is about, Domestica is probably a good place to start,
Yes, yes.
because it's just more of like a introductory to it. And I took it; it was great. And then I took your online workshop, the core and essence. And you also have been, I don't know if it's the core and essence that you teach at QuiltCon,
Yeah,
but you've
it
done
is.
that the last few years, and it sells out like immediately. So
Well,
um,
I really appreciate that. Like, I don't think there was any workshop that did not really fill the class. The
hmm
one reason that because I do not teach more than 6 times a year. So
hmm
I try to not to teach as many times as I should be. Yeah.
hmm
Because if I teach that many times, I will not stitch as much as I should be. So I try
mm,
to be more like the artisans rather than teacher.
that's a good
So yeah,
balance.
it's a good
Yeah.
balance.
hmm
And
Uh, okay. And then we talked about your shop, YouTube Live, and the Domestika. So let's get into the history of Sashiko. And I know that it originated in Japan from necessity. So I just want you to open this up to you to share about the history of Sashiko.
yes, Sashiko was practiced by Japanese when they didn't have enough materials. Some people define that Sashiko was a stitcher in the poverty, but I stopped using that word poor because that's kind of our image to that condition. So since 2019 or so, I started saying that Sashiko is the stitchery developed in the harsh condition with limited resources. It's kind of a long
Mm,
one, but and that's not really only Japanese. Many cultures, including yours, we had a moment that they had to stitch for the survival.
mhm,
And we happen to have the name for that. Many people don't have the name for that very ordinary practice. So Sashiko developed in those times, and there's not that much documents or stories left
mm,
because it's very much ordinary practice for them.
mm,
So it's impossible to pinpoint where the Sashiko's origin is because many people were practicing that already. And but as I
mhm,
said, um, because Japanese people became wealthy, at some point they stopped doing sashiko. Like
mhm,
not everybody, most of them stopped doing sashiko, and the sashiko we can see today is more like the revived version of the sashiko they used to practice.
mm, okay.
So that's kind of long history from the origin to today.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. And well, I did just mention this a little earlier, but that it's not just stitching. There's an appreciation of the practice, or the experience, and if you wanna kind of expound on that, talk about that a little more.
Sure. As you said, that many people focus on the result now. The stitches has
Mhm.
to be this size or rice grain size. My question is, what kind of rice are we talking about? Those those are kind of idiotic to me, because those they wouldn't count. They wouldn't measure the size of stitches if they had to stitch for the survival. They wouldn't care about the size of stitches if your
Mhm.
child is shivering in the cold weather. They would fix the blanket or jacket for her, for him, instead of
Mhm.
worrying about how beautiful it is. So, but at the same time, today's trend in Sashiko, many people focus on the result, and that creates a lot of rules and regulations. But the core of Sashiko is not there. When I really define what Sashiko is in Japanese, when I don't have to explain other stories, I define Sashiko as the form of prayer,
Mm.
which does not really
Mhm.
involve any result. Result is just merely the byproduct. The practice stitching itself is the key of Sashiko, and that include kind of the concept of more than stitching. And I formed the core and essence workshop to explain what that more than stitching part for 6 hours or even 5 days. So it's kind of
Mhm.
difficult to summarize into one sentence.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it is not about making a beautiful stitches. It's not about stitching faster, or it's not about stitching, you know, some certain sizes. It's those are just the result of
Mhm.
doing, and we think that that doing itself is the core of Sashiko.
Mm. Okay. We talked a little bit about the trend, but do you think that the trend and popularity of Sashiko and Boro in the Western world helps or hurts the culture of Japanese Sashiko?
That's a very good question, and I think it's gonna help because without this trend, the Sashiko would be buried um, in the history. Like being acknowledged is one thing, but in order to be acknowledged, it
Mhm.
has to be somewhat visible in the world.
Right.
So this
Yes.
popularity itself is probably helpful. At the same time, it could hurt because it depends on how and who introduced Sashiko.
Mhm.
If it's introduced for the profit only profit by those who doesn't care about Japanese culture but just the money or even profit, then that could be the practice itself can be hurt. Um,
Mhm.
and I kind of see that right now because they don't really
Mhm.
care about what Sashiko really is, but they know that they can get a good viewers or many more followers by saying this is Sashiko.
Mhm.
So if that's the only trend, it's gonna hurt this culture of Sashiko. At the same time, there are many other people on the other side, like you or my followers and my students, who are trying to learn what it is. And thanks to you, I think it's helpful too.
Mm.
So it really
Yeah.
depends on how and who.
So true. Very true. And when I heard you for the first time, I wasn't new to what Sashiko kinda was. I had had an interest in it in previous years, and I had taken 2 courses on it and came back very disappointed and, knew that that really, like, that wasn't really it, but I just couldn't find anything more than what had been out there, and it was exactly as you said. It was just pay for my class, and then the class is, "Oh, this is so simple, it's just a running stitch." And I was just like, "What?" Yeah.
It is just running stitch, but right, there's more than that.
There's more. Yeah. Yeah, a lot more. So, and then, um, it's still I just think your work is very important, because there is a lot of it being presented in the world. Pay your money and then learn about this that is not what it is. So I think it's just, another reason why I wanted to have you on, because many people that sew and quilt, we like to do multiple types of crafts. We like to embroider and sew clothes and make quilts or make handbags. And Sashiko can be in all of those forms.
Yeah.
I've seen it used in clothing and in handbags and quilts and so forth. So, if we're going to bring that into the realm of the Western world of learning this and doing it, then it's important to learn the culture of it as well.
Yep. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. That's why it's gonna help. That's the
Yes.
answer to your question.
Yeah.
Because of what you explained, it's gonna be helpful. Thank you so much for that.
Right. And it's just so much that also just for me personally, this is just my personal opinion, but it's also just having a respect for it.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Or even like
just
acknowledgement. I don't really
yes,
expect for the
acknowledgement.
respect. They don't have to respect it, but I would like to acknowledge it, not ignore it.
Mhm. Whereas I'm more like Cartman on South Park, "Respect my authority."
Exactly. Well, I learned my English from the
That's just a
South
joke.
Park, so
You learned what?
I learned English from the South Park.
Did you?
Yep. So that's they took my
That's funny.
job.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't be talking about this.
My cheesy poofs.
Yep. Timmy.
Oh, so yeah, it's just that's my personal thing. It was just but you're right, acknowledgement.
But
The
many people wants to
acknowledgement.
be authority in Sashiko right now. It's surprising.
Mhm.
So many
Yeah,
people wants to be. I
yeah.
am the authority of Sashiko, but they don't speak Japanese. They don't have any teachers of Japanese. They just learn
Mhm.
Sashiko from somewhere else, and they start saying like, "I am the authority." It's like,
Mhm.
well, I to me it's kind of funny because Sashiko is very ordinary, which is like a mac
Mhm.
and cheese for us.
Yeah.
And would you believe somebody saying like, "I'm the authority of mac and cheese"?
No.
Like, well, that's
It's every day. Anybody can
what are you talking about? There shouldn't be any authorities in mac and cheese. It's
Right. Yeah, because there's a million types of mac and cheeses out there.
exactly or pizza, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Mm. Yeah, and, that reminds me of, I can't remember the name of it, starts with a M, um, but it's a Japanese word,
Mottainai?
for the common
Mottainai?
practice, probably.
Common practice?
Yeah, like a common practice, not like the hero art of art.
Mingei, thank you.
Mingei, yes, yes, yes.
Thank you.
So, is that kind of what you are alluding to is
It's my kind of prediction to the future that the next Japanese war, the world might catch up is the Mingei. The Mingei is like a Japanese version of folk art, if I have to translate that, but
Oh, okay.
um, it's not really the folk art per se. It's part of the folk art, or folk art can be the part of Mingei, or Mingei can be part of the folk art. But the curator in the Williams Moritz Gallery in London translated the Mingei into English very, very well, which is the art without heroes.
Yes.
And that's very, very critical. I was, like, wow. Many people translated unknown craftsmanship, but art without heroes is still like, the sense is very impressive.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
art is always like self expression. Again, once again, authorities, or I want to be
Right.
somebody else. That's why we do art.
Uh-huh.
But Mingei exists in the opposite.
Mm.
It's art, it's beautiful, but we don't know who made it.
Right, because, even in quilting back 100 years ago, um, it usually was quilted by a group of
Yep.
people, not
And
a single
it's
person.
it's not something very Japanese only. We
Mhm.
all had those cultures, and some of the Japanese culture I explained, Sashiko, is not really only about Japanese culture. Western culture or the other even cultures had similar things. We just kind of forget about that, or we just
Mm.
choose not to, take it to
Mhm.
our ordinary life.
Mhm.
Um, so Mingei might help others to remember what it used to be.
Mhm. Yeah. So that's very interesting. See, I'm always learning something new from you, and that's why I think it's great that you continue to do these YouTube live uh, videos. And then also in these lives, just for people who want to check this out, and I'll have the link in the show notes. But y- we can like ask a question or comments while you're doing the live, and you will answer as best you can as to what we're asking, which I thought was great too.
Yes, as long as I don't have to stop stitching. Like, if I get a
Right.
question like show me how you stitch, then I
Right.
have to focus
Yeah.
on the answering the question. So I hope that people find my live streaming as visiting their
Hmm.
grandma's house
Hmm.
to learn how to cook. But don't call me grandma, but I don't want them to call me grandma, but that's kind of image that I want them to have.
Right. And it's not a how to live. It is just like, like, I mean, I could be stitching while I'm watching
That's
your
the goal.
talking, and and the grandma part of it is just, like, hearing the stories and learning more about the culture, and, I mean, 'cause, there's so many facets to it, so someone would think, "Oh, how could you just, have this much to talk about it?" But you do because I see it and hear it.
Well, the question
And
is
people
very
still have questions.
questions are really helpful because I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting. And okay, so YouTube Live, and it's not how to's, it's listening and watching you stitch. Actually, I love watching you stitch too. Because I study like the way you hold the needle and stuff like that. Even though you go pretty fast. Um, and so let's talk about I wanted this kind of last because I didn't really want to focus. There's a whole because there's so much stress about cultural appropriation, and I feel like there just needs to be a balance to it because there's definitely been a lot of overreactions and underreactions. So, it could just be can taken into context in many different ways. And I do personally appreciate your response to it as it relates to Sashiko culture. And again, you can correct me anytime if I'm wrong. But you say that anyone can embrace and learn and enjoy Sashiko while appreciating the Japanese culture. But also credit what you learned, credit the culture, credit, if you learned it, who you learned it from. Like, I credit you because I learned it from you. So, and I tell people, learn from Atsushi. And if not taking your course, then, you know, follow you on Instagram, watch the lives, and just learn. And then maybe after all of that, it may motivate or interest people to try pick up a needle and thread and then just try it. And so I feel like you give a pretty clear understanding without being abrasive or scaring people away from learning and enjoying Sashiko. That's pretty much I should have just let you say that.
No, no, you said everything like the cultural appropriation can be very tricky conversation. I
Yeah.
don't know what it is, to be honest, because we Japanese also appropriate the culture, like borrow or use other cultures' terms and everything.
Uh-huh.
And many people imagine that I would be saying that sashiko is only for Japanese people when I use the word cultural appropriation. But
Mhm.
that means
Mhm.
that they are not watching or they're not even reading what I'm writing. So when I talk about cultural appropriation, there's only one thing I would always say: if you're worried about cultural appropriation, don't worry about it. If you're not worried about it, if you think it's nonsense or if it's like BS for that matter, then you
Mhm.
may want to worry about it a little bit. So
Mhm.
when they worry about what is the behind of this word, then I don't think, you know, respect is great, but just acknowledgement is enough.
Mm-hmm.
I find the culture like the river, like water is not anybody's property in general. We can use the water from the river and then we can appreciate it. But every river, regardless of the size, has the upstream. When we do not recognize or acknowledge the upstream, one day we may lose all the river's water. So, in order to appreciate, in order to have that wealth, it is very important to acknowledge where that water comes from. And I think the culture is the same way. So, and that's pretty much everything I ask in the my sharing. Um, YouTube videos, I show pretty much everything. I share everything I always do. So, and I even say that please copy it. You can copy it. You can teach. You can teach. Anybody can teach what I do. And I'm not claiming any of the copyrights. Just please mention that where it came from so that I can be responsible for mentioning where I learned that from.
Mm-hmm.
So the lineage of that culture will be
Continues.
continuous. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, and strong. Um, which then, so that actually brings me back to my question to you of like the if it helps or hurts with the trends and stuff. But it without the recognition, it will hurt because it will um just get so transformed into so many things that it loses itself.
Yes,
Is that what you're
that's my fear.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in this world, we can say that I taught myself, and I say that a lot. When I fix the faucet or like a plumbing,
Mhm.
I learned
Mhm.
that from YouTube, right?
Mhm.
And then I do not acknowledge who I learned from. But so there's so many free informations, and we can always borrow somebody's knowledge. And I think that's the beauty of
Mhm.
the internet. And if you or any listeners of this podcast is just enjoying Sashiko, they don't even have to acknowledge my name. They don't have to even
Mhm.
share my name. But those
Mhm.
who teach or those who spread the information like you do,
Mhm.
then
Mhm.
the acknowledging or you know identifying where they learn from is very very important. So if I
Mhm.
decided to be a plumber, then I have to list who I learned from.
Right.
If I do
Right.
it for my house, then probably it's not that big deal. So that's the
Exactly.
only difference I am asking. If they, or if you, or if anybody else are planning to teach about Sashiko or publish about it or spread the information,
Uh,
then the acknowledgement is very, very necessary.
yeah.
Otherwise, please, please have fun.
Right. Yeah. And enjoy
Yeah,
it.
don't worry about it.
So so yeah, I thought it was still important to address and I think that your what you're asking is very simple and clear and there's no whereas with other topics of cultural appropriation, um, it's not as clear, and then it sort of scares me away from even approaching it because no one wants to, you know,
Yeah, absolutely.
a-
I agree.
appropriate the culture, basically. And I feel like too that that has actually gotten diluted over the years because I originally thought cultural appropriation. I think it was. This is just my understanding, but it was more like not appreciating a culture. Basically, it was just like taking from a culture and sort of, you know, misusing or just making fun. Like the respect wasn't there. So that was my original, like, but then it kind of has changed over the years. And then it became like anything related to a culture other than your own is appropriation. And that's crazy because I think everyone should have an appreciation for other cultures. We're such a global, especially now with like internet and, you know, instant communication with cultures around the world. It's almost impossible to not. appreciate Boro and, want to acknowledge it. But that's what it's about, acknowledgement now.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the same time, there are many other experts who talk about cultural appropriation, and there are a group of people who think or who say that kimono is only for Japanese people.
Right.
And
Yeah.
to be honest, I respect them. They have their own reason to say that.
Mhm.
And there might be the history of the kimono word or itself being taken away from those original people. I respect them. I don't think what they're saying is nonsense. They have their own story, and we should
Mm.
acknowledge that.
Mhm.
At the same time, we should find a bridge to
Right.
connect those appropriation to the appreciation, uh, which is acknowledgement.
Yes.
And when they do not acknowledge those, though, there's so many good videos about explaining what the cultural appropriation is. Um, some people say it's like a three P's: properties, profit, person. Those kind of like if one of those are taken away, then it's an issue. It's too academic to me. I don't understand those like difficult
Mhm.
language.
Yeah, I know. It can get very
So
out there.
I
So,
really like to make it simple.
yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah.
just don't ignore the voice from the origin, and I don't think that's too
Yeah.
much to ask.
No, not at all.
This might link to the story in the beginning, but let's say that you have a business selling the Boro placemat.
Mhm.
You happen to find me saying that Boro is not for the placemat for the food. In order to keep making a profit out of your business, if you decided to ignore what I say and even like deny that what I say was not happening, that might be the form of cultural appropriation.
Ah, yes.
And surprisingly, there's quite many accounts who block me.
Oh,
I'm not joking. There are quite many people who don't
uh-huh.
like what I say because
Yeah.
they think that what I would say could hurt them.
Mm.
And that's the time, like, well, it's not a nonsense thing because there are a group of people who try to sort of narrow it down. They are the opposite side of you, but that could happen. So, and if that could happen, there are the people who are probably suffering from it. So I don't find
Mm.
cultural appropriation as nonsense things. But
Mhm.
since we're talking about it, I
Mhm.
think that's
Yeah.
good approach.
Okay, yes. What are, like, some people wanna just try it out? There's all of these classic, Sashiko designs patterns out there, like Hidomezashi, or if I'm saying that
Mhm.
right. Um, and, what are some of the other, like, really classic but nice, like, uh you actually had 3 patterns on Domestika, uh, that were fairly simple, so if you wanna kind of, like, just talk about there's one that's like the wave.
Yeah. Design wise, there's no such a thing as Sashiko design. It's just the
Oh,
geometric design that we use a lot in Sashiko.
yeah, lots of geometric patterns, like,
And
there's the tortoise one I love, um, and I also love the curvy ones, there's very popular actually in pop culture. You see them I see them
yeah,
everywhere, like, on printed, graphics, on clothing patterns, on fabric patterns, um, so
those are not the Sashiko patterns. That's the geometric, like geometric patterns that we use a lot.
Oh, okay,
So some of
okay.
them are used in the constructions, as you said. It's probably Japanese, or even sometimes it's not even Japanese. We may learn that from
Oh,
Chinese
got
design. We
it.
don't know that. But there's no such a thing as Sachiko patterns. We often use the
Okay.
Asanoha patterns, Shippo patterns. That's what you learn from the Domestika.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that that's the Sachiko patterns you have to use. It's just, you know, the
Like,
common thing. It's
common thing.
analogy
Okay.
wise, it's just pepperoni and mushrooms. Very common,
Okay.
right?
I see. Yes,
Not
yes.
the you can't draw anything, but that can be weird, like pineapple, which has a lot
Uh-huh.
of discussion. It's good or bad.
Uh-huh.
And if you draw your face on the fabric and stitch that, that can be considered sashiko, but that's gonna bring a lot of discussions if it's or not. So
Oh, right.
so
Yeah.
that's the difference.
Okay. Okay.
And each sashiko has the styles which can be different from the foundation. So like Chicago pizza, or New York style pizza, they're different. On
Mm,
top of that,
mm-hmm.
we can choose what we want to add topping. So that was the
Mm.
analogy I used. Sorry, it's
Oh,
kind of
all right. Oh, well, that okay.
so we can talk about styles. There's so many different kind of style of sashiko, which I am not really well educated to talk about others.
Okay. No, but that your answer actually was all right, a good answer to what my understanding is now. So it clarified it for me. Hopefully, it clarifies it for the listeners. But um I understand it better now that
Good.
they're geometric patterns. It's not like this is Sashiko, Asanoho, Sashiko only.
I just stitched that because that's the easiest
Yeah.
pattern for me to stitch.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's pretty too. I like it.
Yeah.
I do like it. Is there anything else you want to share about your work in Sashiko?
Well, if you could follow my Instagram and
Mm-hmm.
website, I try to keep updating everything I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, at this moment, if I advertise what I do, then they will be disappointed because everything is sold out
Oh yeah,
for
yeah.
2025. Unfortunately,
Yes.
everything is booked. Not unfortunately,
Yeah.
it's fortunately for me.
Oh, and we forgot to talk about your trips to Japan.
Oh
You
yes,
do those.
I do have a trip to Japan. I call it Sashiko Japan Retreat.
Mhm.
And one of the biggest things I worry about is that my stories are based on my stories, and it's quite personal. And I do not represent everybody in Japanese Sashiko practice. And my goal is to bring as many Japanese people as possible to speak up, but they don't speak English or they're not willing to speak up.
Mhm.
So I decided to bring people to them. So, well, then going through that, they are really good. They're masters in Sashiko, doing Sashiko for more than decades. And
Mm.
by learning from them, not only listening, but doing Sashiko together, we can share more information, more knowledge, more stories. And that's the Sashiko Japan retreat, which is 10
Mhm.
days of series of workshop. If they like Sashiko or stitching, this will be great. If they don't like stitching, that's going to be the hell because stitching throughout for 10 days. So if you don't like stitching, don't take this. But
Mhm.
I plan it is my goal to keep offering that because I may be the only one who can organize it at this moment.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, but yeah, unfortunately, the waiting list is pretty long too. But if you
Yeah.
could join the waiting list, I will
Uh-huh.
try to keep updating that too.
Oh, nice. Very good. And all of this is on your website. The Sash you have a couple. It's Upcycle Stitches
Yes, upcyclestitches.com
and
and then sashikostory.com.
mhm.
Upcyclestitches.com was hacked once,
Oh, that's
and I
right.
got really freaked out. I do have a now security team backed up, but at the
Uh-huh.
same time, I'm worried about it. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to integrate to the sashikostory.com. But I'm not well organized on the website. So if you cannot find the
Um,
information, please, you know,
yeah.
DM me or
I
something like that.
Right. And I will have the links to that to your Instagram website and YouTube.
Yep.
Very good. Oh, well, thank you so much. I so appreciate you coming on to the podcast and telling your story. And really is educational for me and for my listeners. And it's just fascinating to learn about this. I really love it.
Yep. So if you or any other audience have questions about anything I said, please come to the live streaming.
Mhm.
Even on live or recording is fine. Just if you could leave the comments with questions or even challenges accepted. If
Mhm.
anything,
Mhm.
um, those request questions or even challenge will help me to understand what is requested, what is interested to the
Mhm.
people
Right.
in English. So I
Yep.
appreciate those comments and questions.
Yes, and a lot of times I can't be at the live, so I will watch them. They're recorded and posted there, and I do like read through some of the questions, and you will answer it in the video. And like you said, you could still leave a comment
Yep.
or question on any of the live videos that are watched after they're
Yep.
done live. But it's fun. It's fun when I can watch you live because it's like a, you know, live. You're right there and
Yeah.
we can get instant answers
I'm not usually
to
prepared,
questions.
so you can push me to the corner. We can fight.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Thanks again. And we'll just keep following you on Instagram and your YouTube lives.
Thank you so much.
Keep learning.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Please help support this podcast by following me on Instagram at stephanie.socha.design and my YouTube channel at Make and Decorate. Also, check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/makeanddecorate, where you can subscribe to receive an extra podcast episode every month. Until next time, keep making and decorating.